Well, welcome, Wheeling family. Happy Friday to everybody. I see some baseball, lacrosse. I see volleyball. I see some folks from the track team here in our audience today. Uh, Also, want to shout out. We've got a couple birthdays on campus today. Coach Tyler Clark from women's basketball. It's his birthday today, and Allison Cunningham, a freshman on the volleyball team. There you go. Happy birthday, Allison. Let's get a win today. Let's get a win today. Okay. Hey, welcome to starting the conversation. A conversation on diversity. Thanks to the Martin Luther King Committee, who has influenced talks on diversity in the city of Wheeling. Special shout out to the Black Student Union Committee, which includes President Key Jordan, Anya Vaughns, Xavier Thomas, Desi James, Liz Salas, and Jasmine Pilkerton, who is right now delivering meals, quarantine meals to our folks that are currently under quarantine. So thanks to Jazz for stepping up. She's going to wave out here shortly when she's complete. Well, thanks for continuing to give a platform of interaction across campus via the various activities that the Black Student Union holds. And then especially President Jenny Favid and the campus ministry staff of Father Rich and Father Hottie for being ambassadors, and that was the word of the day on Ash Wednesday, being ambassadors for change on the Wheeling University campus and in the Ohio Valley. So, hey, thanks for Pierce Media. Hey, you guys are making us look good up here. We appreciate it. And Donna White's been in the background running around, making phone calls, texting, and whatnot. So thank you to Donna for everything that she has done to make this event possible. So the conversation, okay, the conversation has loomed large from the first time human beings were sold as property to the abolishment of slavery, from the civil rights movement, the right to vote, a right to a good and fair education, a living wage, a right to go, a right to congregate, a right to drive, a right to walk, a right to jog, and person not presumed guilty by the color of their skin, but only on the merits of their character. Today, people in the Valley there's been some outstanding individuals that have been awarded, and I'd like to give those folks some praise today. Unfortunately, with the Martin Luther King Committee, we weren't able to congregate. We were not able to march. All of the sports teams here at Wheeling dedicated themselves to that march, and unfortunately, it did not happen. But today, we'd like to acknowledge those award winners. Those were Ellen Saunders of Moundsville and her sister Judy Saunders of Bridgeport have received the Rosa Parks Award. Those two ladies are instrumental in working at the Laughlin Chapel, while Daniel Dudley of Wellsburg and Chase Watts, who has some literature out in the atrium from Martin's Ferry, have received the Martin Luther King Award for their contributions in eliminating racial inequality and promoting peace and harmony. Each has worked diligently to improve the quality of life for all the people in this valley. So, as for the panel today, to start this conversation, to my left over here, your right, we have Coach Mott Grayman. He's a third-year defensive coordinator and defensive backs coach here at Wheeling. Mott is a graduate of West Virginia Wesleyan University, earned all league honors in 2006 as a recipient of the Earl Greasy Neal Award. You remember that award, Coach? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. For the most inspirational player. Then he moved into professional indoor football, and then after that later began his coaching journey, which has brought him here to Wheeling. And also we have Corey Campanese from St. Clairsville, Ohio, and also an admissions rep over at Belmont College. He is also a contributor to the Martin Luther King Committee, and of course an Ohio Valley resident. We also will have Ron Scott. He is on his way here. A very, 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 very busy gentleman right now. He is the program director of cultural diversity and community outreach at the YWCA. So I want to, before we get started on some questions, I'd like to turn the mic over to Corey. You know, Corey, you reached out to Jenny and myself a few months ago when we were preparing to have a display for Martin Luther King. We wanted to do something for the students because, you know, we dedicated ourselves to marching, and you know, we weren't able to do that. And, you know, we wanted to be able to tribute Martin Luther King, and also to, you know, to start the momentum with Black history and with social justice. So, you know, you stepped to the plate and offered us this display, and it's a display that it is a grassroots effort of your own and your family. So, so welcome to Wheeling University, and can you talk to us a little bit about yourself and about the display that's out in the lobby right now?
Sure, Mike. Thanks for the introduction. For me, it was started last summer. It was a call to action personally with me and my family. We saw the events unfold with George Floyd, as everybody here in the room probably saw, and we saw that we needed a time of calmness and peacefulness, and to remind ourselves of what Dr. King had taught us about looking through the prism of 6 principles of nonviolence, and then the 6 principles to nonviolent social change. And my vision for it was very simple. I don't want to take credit for anything that Dr. King had already given us with great work and sacrifice to his life. But it was a self-service kind of kiosk where people could come up and say, you know, sometimes we lose what Dr. King's message is through his speeches. What were the practical pieces that Dr. King brought to us? What could I take home with me and say, I have people who are opposing me in every front that I'm working through in my life right now, whether it be education, work, whatever it may be. What are some practical steps that Dr. King actually provided us that I could look through and challenge myself and those in my community to do? So that was my educational approach by taking that role and presenting that kind of a self-service kiosk. If I wasn't present, people could easily take that information and take it with them. And I also tried to instill that at Belmont College also. The same display was at Belmont College. So all these happened in the matter of the last 6 to 8 months. We were also given an opportunity to provide it at St. Clairsville's Plaza, and people from the general public were able to come up, ask questions, and take that information along with them. So it was a joint effort with my family, and it was also a time just to recognize that we needed a peace and calm time during that turbulent situation with George Floyd. Thank you, Mike.
Well, thanks, Corey. And that kind of leads into the first question. You know, what has been your role with diversity in your field, and what initiatives are you involved with? So, so obviously, you know, Corey, I'm going to have you grab the mic again, but, you know, Corey, you know, it kind of went from, you know, from this display to your time here, and you know, this is definitely an initiative that you brought onto yourself, and we appreciate it.
Right, Mike. For me, it was pretty simple. You know, my graduate degree offered me, you know, kind of the unique opportunity to look at our long-lasting, you know, Ohio Valley energy production narrative coal. My background is actually environmental concern and environmental science and studies. So I saw diversity as something that was a problem found in natural production of energy. So that's my role in my field. And something that I saw that could be transformative was that the workforce in this area could really go somewhere different. And it would include, diverse opportunities found in renewable energy technology and infrastructure. And we're starting to see that now. And second, uncovering what many of you may know and hear, the negative externalities that people who are maybe of color or lower economic standing, sometimes those industries prey upon those communities and leave that infrastructure in place. So I see it largely through the prism of environmental concern. And I look for those negative externalities that are being brought upon the doorstep of those people who are less fortunate and can't move out of the area. And especially in Appalachia, which we all are a part of. So the longstanding Appalachian fight to change into renewable energy infrastructure and understanding the plight of how we're going to make that mountain change now. How are we going to go from second industrial revolution now to third industrial revolution? How do we train those people to go forward?
And Jenny, I think some of the programs that are evolving here at Wheeling are going into renewable energy and what's happening here with fracking and whatnot. I mean, I've been on a pad, and there ain't a lot of people looking like me on the pad. It's a hard job. You've got the water bottles, you've got security, you've got the guys that are working in the rig. It's a tough job, but I'm glad that Jenny has the foresight to look at that industry and provide education for everyone here. And that should be an option for everyone and anyone in the Valley. So Coach, moving to you, you have one of the diverse and obviously the largest roster on campus. I mean, what has diversity meant to you, with your team?
First of all, thank you guys for having me here today. Diversity for our team is just, based off what we do in recruiting. My main recruiting area is the DMV area in Atlanta, Georgia. So I get the opportunity to go into a lot of areas where it might be a lower economic status. So to be able to bring those guys here and put them in an environment that might be a little bit different, but it gives them the opportunity at an education and for them to see something different, I think that's major, for this university's development, but more importantly, for them as an individual. So I think just being able to recruit and bring families on campus, do we get everybody here? No, but it gives us the opportunity to kind of show our product to people that might not see it, if I wasn't in a position to be able to bring them here.
Well, I appreciate that, Coach, and it's a tall order. It's inviting kids on campus and doing our best here, and we certainly are doing that. We're excited to get football going here. We're practicing cleaning snow off. Coach, you got to clean that snow.
Yes.
Woo. Okay. That makes me tired just watching you guys clean all that snow off. But from what we're doing and obviously out in the St. Clairsville area and working in environmental to what we're doing in athletic teams. Ron, welcome. Ron, you're 24/7, working in community outreach, diversity. You're guest speaking. You're putting out fires. You're politicking. Obviously, there are a lot of people here that don't know who you are. Jenny Favit certainly knows who you are. Mike Giannis certainly knows who you are. But could you tell our student body and the folks watching live right now, what is it that you do?
That's the $1 million question, I guess. My boss and my board love asking me that myself. But I am the Cultural Diversity and Community Outreach Director for the Wheeling YWCA. And that's a huge title, which simply, I guess the simplest way of putting it is my job is to identify, showcase, and highlight different groups or demographics that you could consider a culture in the Ohio Valley. And I take my job very seriously, and I try to go out here and find whatever groups feel like they may not have been represented enough, and really try to shine a light on them so that some folks can understand how rich some of the cultures that already exist in this community really are, and how easy it is to become a part of it. So I feel like that's most of my day, doing all that.
So with that, like what type of formal programs at the YWCA do you currently have?
Okay, well, this is the part. Now, you're probably definitely going to have to cut me off at one point, because when you talk about programming, I really do enjoy it. Because one of the things I try to do is do things that are not necessarily the norm when it comes to programming. Like, one of the things that we did last year that we're going to do this year once we can gather again is an event that we called Hip Hop, a Black Tie Affair. So we looked at the music and the culture associated with hip hop music, and we broke it down into 3 separate categories where we took actual hip-hop artists in the area, because I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Ohio Valley. You can't throw a rock without hitting 8 rappers. So we got those cats in a room, and we let them do an a cappella video of their favorite verse or the best verse they had, and that focused on the artistic side of it. So then we got a hold of every visual artist that we could in the area, and they had to develop pieces themed in or based in hip-hop, and they were exhibited all over the Willing Artisan Center. So at the event, you would show up, you would watch the video of these a cappella rappers, you'd see all these art pieces steeped in and based in hip-hop, and we hired a DJ from Canada to come down, and he played the original songs that most hip-hop music was sampling, and he would blend the samples with the current music to show you where it all came from, and it gave you a night of kind of culture to go along with the music. And we added a touch of elegance by making sure everybody had to wear a shirt and tie or a gown to attend, and it was one of the few times you ever got to see elegance and hip-hop put in the same sentence and appreciated for the art form and culture that it really was. So we got to do that, and then we did an event with the LGBT plus community called the Art of Inclusion, where we, unfortunately, as you guys probably all know, the Valley isn't as diverse of a community as you might want it to be. So what the goal with that event was to show you members of that community in different lights. So we identified a member of the community. They found a place that they felt the most comfortable or the most themselves. We had a photographer come and take pictures of them there. And then they had to identify someone that they cared about the most, and they wrote a 1-page narrative about that person. So at the actual event, you had the person, you had the photograph that we took of them, and you had the 1-page narrative written up about them. And the goal was to then show you that each member of the LGBT community could be represented in at least 3 different lights. There was 3 different ways you could view them. And they're so poorly represented in the area that we often kind of paint them with one broad stroke, and we want to look at them one way, and they're one thing. And it kind of broke that all up and showed them a bunch of different ways you could view one person. And the last one, and then I'll let it go, we did a redhead festival, and we just focused on people with red hair, and we invited them all to the Y. We wanted to try to set some sort of a record, but we ended up only getting 80. We got 80 people with red hair. We had events based in Celtic and Irish heritage. We found out we had cancer screenings, because there are some skin cancers that redhead people are more susceptible to have than others. But that event went well. We had authors from the Ohio Valley that were donating books based on the experience of being a redheaded person. A guy from France submitted a short film that he made that we screened for the first time at the Redhead Festival. But they were just different. All those were 3 different events that targeted 3 different demographics, but the goal was to show you how like you were with them. Like they were all inclusive in nature. And I think people walked away with a whole lot of different attitudes and ideas from each of those separate events. That's the kind of stuff that we like to do program-wise.
Well, thanks, Ron. I mean,
Sorry for taking that.
That's those are the kind of people that the Ohio Valley brings to the table. People like Ron Scott, and we are weekly getting to know each other And when we tackle this COVID, I know that this Wheeling community will certainly be involved in all that you're doing, and it's just another avenue for us to do community service with and among others, and I'm on board. I already gave you some quilts, so we have a lot of work to do, but one of the most on the subject of diversity, and on the second question I have for you, and it may be the toughest one today, what is the most difficult part of implementing a diversity in the Valley? Corey, you're from St. Clairsville. You could sit at home comfortably, not even know that this is going on right now. And you've stepped to the plate, and you've come out, and your heart and your mind is open, and you're educating yourself, and you're educating others. So for us and the people in the Valley, I mean, what do you think the most difficult thing is to implement diversity in a diversity program, whether that's in the community or maybe a business?
I'm going to be kind of blunt here about this. I think one of the biggest problems that we have is people aligning themselves, especially in the last election that took place, just aligning themselves politically left or right and forgetting about the overall situations that are at hand, and whether they can be truly solved initially, at least politically, or are we failing to look back during times? I'm a historian also. This is perfectly illustrated by Dr. King. We're going to talk about Dr. King and diversity. And, look how effective he was outside the political fray at the time. And he was able to work with Johnson to a point, but he also knew that he had to reach outside the political element and to garner the support of the people who believed in his mission and his statement. And when he lost that political support, and we knew in 1968 when he decided to go against the president and his administration against the Vietnam War, we knew that pretty much sealed his fate of any political cooperation from the government anymore. And that really concerned me as an individual, because I do a whole political assassinations of the 1960s discussion group at Belmont College. And that's one of the things we touched on, that 68 moment. He always had resistance against that. But we also have to see, he demanded change outside the political norms. He wanted something done for the people that he represented. And he was a giant among any civil rights person that we can think of. And I think the other part is that, the near constant question as to what is to be considered diverse in any society, whether it be locally or even beyond. Especially as we're kind of merging towards liberal democracy here in America. How little thought by those people sometimes oppose this, think that, some of the things that they enjoy were based on diversity, whether they understand that or not. They stand on the shoulders of those people that have really helped them along. So I think those are the biggest challenges. The political climate that we're living within, whether you're left or right, really doesn't matter to me. People that actually get the things done in the world can sometimes stand beyond that. And two, what are those things that are people considering not just diverse in race, religion, anything else? What about diversity of opportunity, employment? How do we avoid poverty? How do we avoid increased militarism? How do we learn beyond those things? Those are also diverse ideas that need to be brought to the table. And that's why I spoke earlier about the importance of looking for renewable energy technologies. That's a diverse position outside what we would consider the norm, as 80% of our electricity is still produced by coal. So what's a diverse avenue for people to go into of color, of lower economic stature in this new renewable energy regime? Yeah.
And Coach, you and I are both men of color here, coaches here on campus, and you and I have had some conversations about getting involved and being, having an opportunity to stand here and to talk about diversity, and I know we're making the first step along with Jenny, and that's starting the conversation. So what is your advice to the rest of the coaches that we have on campus, to fuel that diversity discussion?
I think just being willing to have a conversation with the kids. We work with kids every single day. My interaction with being a coordinator, I interact with minimum 50 guys a day. Be willing to listen to their experiences and how they feel to make sure they don't feel left out. Because everybody wants acceptance. They come to this university based off, the relationship you have with them in recruiting, but they want to be accepted in the environment that they're, living in and working within. So having that conversation with your players is one way. The second way, I believe you got to be willing to step out your comfort zone. Okay, everybody, my players know me. I'm more comfortable teaching the game, teaching them life lessons through the game, and being out on the field. That's where I'm the most comfortable. This is not comfortable. But I'm willing to do it just, again, to bring awareness to, what needs to happen, for us to be able to say that we are a diverse university, but you have to be willing to have that conversation, but more importantly, be willing to listen to them.
Well, thanks, Coach. I mean, hey, we might be in the same boat. I mean, this is this is a labor of love, and sometimes we need to put the spotlight on ourselves in order to share and care and to outreach. So Ron, I mean, you're seeing it on a lot of different fronts, and with your programs, I've listened to. You and I have been on radio show together. I've listened to podcasts and whatnot. But the difficult part about implementing diversity, for you, what has been the difficult part?
I think it's twofold when it comes to the stuff that I work with. The first thing I think is we're always fighting against the status quo in a way. Like we're in the Valley. Everything I do is based in the Valley, Ohio Valley. So we're always fighting against the idea of this is how it's always been here, and no change is comfortable when people are so set in their ways the way that they are in the Valley. So the idea of bringing more things that are a diverse nature around. The first question you're always going to get is why? Like, well, come on now, why are we doing all this? Come on, you're doing this much? Like, I remember when the city decided they were going to have the Indian Festival. You wouldn't believe how many people were thinking initially, like, oh, wow, like cowboys and Indians are going to be, what are you going to do? No, we were talking about the Asian, Indian people, and it ended up being a huge success. But it was initially looked at as, like, well, why are we doing that? Like, I haven't seen any Indian people around. And instead of just, what can I learn from an experience like that, which needs to be the response when someone brings something to you like that. And the other barrier that has come in my direction when it comes to diversity is the idea that diversity means I have to have a white person, a black person, a gay person, a handicapped person, that you need to have all this stuff sitting at the table in order for it to be diverse. But one of the examples I like to use would be like if we were at a classroom that taught literature. It's not that the students all have to be from everywhere and every hue and every color and every idea, but the material you teach has to be. Like you can have all white teachers, all white students in the whitest of campuses, but if you're teaching material from people that are black, white, Latino, gay, handicapped, then those ideas and experience are being filtered onto your students, and that what makes it diverse. And if the posters that you have on the walls in your classroom are filled with people that don't necessarily look like the folks sitting in the seats, you've achieved diversity without having to switch student populations in any way, shape, or form. So it's not really as difficult as a lot of folks might make it seem to be.
Mike, if I can add a quick point to
Yes.
to Ron's statement. I had the same situation at Belmont College where a fellow colleague, after I had put up the presentation with Dr. King's work, she came to me and said, why is this up? It's not Martin Luther King's Day. It's not what's going on. This is, now remember, this is right after we went through the unfortunate one with George Floyd. And it struck me as like, you don't have to be positioned in a certain month or a certain year. This is something that needs to be the calming effect of what we just saw. And this is where we hope to gain some guidance from people in the past that have gone through traumatic experiences the same way. So it does hit home. It does become a why is this? Why is this now? If it wasn't during his birthday, why are you doing that? So it's heartfelt. It is.
Corey, I want to lean back on you, and you know, you're talking to a lot of students, and you know, there are obstacles, you know, that come in their way, and when it comes to, you know, those obstacles, and can you give us some insight on, you know, some of the obstacles that some of the students have, or some of the people that you've run across when it comes to diversity, or when it, you know, maybe use the word prejudice, you know, in the workplace, on you know, in the workplace, career or otherwise, housing. You know, Ron, you'll probably, you know, there may be some comments you'll have regarding housing, but can you give us some insight on that?
I think for me, I can speak of two experiences. I'm a very direct and practical person, as most people know. I'm like most people. I worked a variety of jobs throughout my life, and I used to work at Lowe's in Wheeling, and I was an assembler, and I worked with a gentleman who was Hispanic, a wonderful man. He was ex-military, U.S. military, but he was subjugated to the back of the building, and all he did all day long was assemble things in a seasonal fashion. And I worked with him, and he was wonderful, and he kept in touch with me after I left Lowe's, because he felt that I was the only person that never paid attention to him, and he needed that additional help. I mean, this guy was strong, brazen, ex-military, like I said. But what happened one day, we were outside in the middle of a 95-degree weather day, and we were assembling, which most of you have probably seen, picnic tables. And those come either unassembled or assembled. Well, I happened to be helping him, and we worked like in a team wonderfully together. He would dismantle it, I would put it together, and there was a gentleman that walked out of Lowe's and looked at both of us, and he looked specifically at my coworker and said, "How do you like your job?" And I took that as a reference, is you're taking a job because he sees that he's a Hispanic person. I mean, this is how brazen it was. He said, "How do you like your job?" And he had this disgruntled look on, not me, but looking at my coworker. And as you can imagine, I certainly wasn't in the mode of thinking of Dr. King at that point in time. It was 95-degree weather, and it was hot, so I put down my tools, and I walked towards the customer. And the coworker had to come and reach back and pull me back and say, "Corey, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Let it go." And he went his way, and I went my way, and we continued our work. So that's one example. The second example, personal level, not work. I DJ'd a biracial couple's wedding, and a few nights before the wedding, we went to Drover's. Most of you people know where Drover's is at, up on Washington Pike, great food. And my wife and I were sitting with a biracial couple, and behind us there was another couple, and they kept staring at the couple that we were with and passing ungracious looks throughout the evening. So I'm kind of confrontational in some manners. Once again, I couldn't go back to Dr. King at that time, so I turned around to him and just asked him point blank, "Is there a problem? What's the situation here?" And that's all it took, because they know they didn't want to go anything further. They didn't think that something like that was going to happen to them, an affront to that injustice of looking at our friends who happen to be a biracial couple. So I know how that feels directly. I'm sure people here have had some type of experience like that as well. Thank you.
And Coach, you know, you've been a lot of places. I mean, you have a lot of experience, and you know, but through your time before you came here, I mean, you know, did you experience obstacles or people in your profession experience issues with diversity?
Yes, you know, before I got here, I was in Cleveland, Ohio, so it was a pretty metropolitan area. I worked in Columbia, Kentucky, but before I coached in the United States, I coached in Poland. So I was the only black head coach in the league, probably the only black head coach in the country. So, and then you're talking about a language barrier. So being able to understand that there would be certain things held against me just based off the fear of the unknown, you know, based off whatever stereotypes they might have had, you know, of an African-American man being in leadership, those are things that I had to deal with daily, within our organization, within the country, within the league. Being in a place like here where diversity is, a challenge, being in the community, I'm not always seen as a coach. I'm seen as an African-American male. So do I experience certain challenges here? Absolutely. Have I experienced certain challenges from just driving and being pulled over? Yes. On a consistent basis for 3 years, absolutely. But I always tell our players, we don't get to, control how people perceive us. We get to control how we react. Because at the end of the day, these players are looking up to me as a guide. Okay, if this happens, I'm going to call Coach Grayman. Well, I have a direct insight on how to handle that situation moving forward. Because at the end of the day, I have a 4-year-old and I have a wife. So any decision that I make is going to directly affect them. My son's going to look up to me no matter what. I get to control the narrative how, based off my actions in dealing with certain things. So it's just like you say, you saw your colleague go through something, he come to you and say, it's not worth it. Doesn't mean that you don't feel good about it. Might want to have the same reaction that you have, but at the end of the day, I got a 4-year-old that's going to run in the door and say, Daddy, that's the most important thing that I can do to get home to him. And being a football coach, I have football players, white, black, Spanish, don't matter where, they're going to look up to me, and based off my actions, if something's in the paper of me reacting in a negative way, they're going to look at me and say, well, you told me to do X, Y, and Z, and you did the opposite. So.
Well, thank you for your professionalism, and eventually it won't be that way, and it starts with having these conversations. And I would ask that anyone that any of our student body or anyone listening in a congregation or at another local university, if you have issues out there, you need to go to your coaching staff or your dean of students. I know there've been at least one situation here that individual went to their coach. That coach then went to President Favid, and the authorities were called, and that was taken care of. But we are here to support you, and we're going to use all of our resources, which includes the President Favid to ensure that we're being treated equally, we're treated right, and we're being treated fairly. So, Coach, I know that took a lot for you to talk about, and I appreciate it. And Ron, you've been in the Valley, you've lived here. There are a lot of people on the committee that have a lot of stories. I applaud Coach for doing the right thing. As an African American male, female, are we having to do better when we're driving? Is it can't we just drive and be cool are you having any conversations with like law enforcement and whatnot? So,
oh yeah, well, I feel like there was a lot there, and I just want to, before because I definitely want to talk about what it is you're saying, I just wanted to piggyback on something that the coach was saying, because I think a lot of folks, specifically students here, and maybe just white folks in general that are coming to hear this, you've heard stories like this a lot. Like, you've heard us talk about situations we've been put in and those sort of things. And I think it's very easy to not necessarily dismiss those stories, but to kind of to make peace with those stories when you think to yourself that I'd have no problem if Ron or Coach came to my house. They could come in, we could have dinner, we could sit down. I wouldn't be the type that would object or do anything weird about that. That's great, and I applaud you for it. But the real question I think you need to ask yourself is, how would you react if Coach or I were randomly standing outside of your home? If you may have just glanced outside your window and you saw me and Coach near your car? Is it, oh, it's two guys wonder where they're going? Or is it, hey, do you know them? Hey, should we call somebody? Hey, should we? Those are just things that indicate the level of exposure you may have to folks that are different than you. Because if you see us out there and it's an issue, maybe you need to broaden your horizon, expand your circles a little bit, because I don't know about Coach, but living in the Valley my entire life, I can tell you places, towns, cities, and streets that I shouldn't be on at certain times and that I wouldn't be on at certain times, because my presence there would alarm people in a way that the authorities would be called. But just consider that scenario in your head, that if me and Coach are just walking down your street, if there would be a reaction, if anything at all. Now, as far as just growing up in the Valley and the stuff that I would run into, there's a laundry list of things, and I love that with the position I have now, I get to work with agencies to kind of correct a lot of that stuff. Because after the George Floyd murder, it seemed like people were in a unique position where they wanted to do something. My office was just inundated with calls of, what can I do? Is there something I can do? And I loved it because I always had an answer. I was never telling folks, well, I don't know. I figured something out. And one of the people that reached out to me was the Martins Ferry Police Department. And they want to do an entire training for every officer in that police force, which is amazing to me. Now, it wasn't just the idea of the whole George Floyd murder that made them do that. They also had an incident with a police officer that was in their department where he said some really disparaging and racially insensitive things on Facebook, and the community called him out on it, and he got fired. He sued, got his job back, and won, and they had to pay him back pay, all that sort of stuff. But the mayor and the police chief reached out and said, this makes us as a community and the police force look bad. Is there anything you can do to help? So he signed the entire police force up for trainings that are about cultural diversity, racial sensitivity, and all that sort of stuff. So I do think we're making headway, but I do know that the meter that I use to gauge a lot of that is with my friends and my family. How often do I get to hear warning stories? And it is raising. I do now. It's not. If someone were to come in now and say, yeah, I got pulled over yesterday and I got a warning, they're like, what? They let you off with a warning? Incredible. But now they might be like, hey, they let us off with a warning. We're like, oh, well, okay. The warning stories are starting to grow. And it took me a while to learn that in my white counterparts in their households, the opposite was the odd thing. When they were like, this guy actually gave me a ticket. They're like, what do you mean he gave you a ticket? Are you serious? Like, yeah, you were right down the street from the house. He gave you a ticket? And they would be outraged. When in my house, if I came in and like, this dude gave me a warning, they was ready to have a celebration. Because, one, I made it home, and two, I don't have to pay an odd fine for some crazy stuff. And I can remember, I don't know if you want to get on all the stories that we had, but I can remember a town, and again, no shots to the town if anybody lives in any of these towns, but the town Bridgeport, right across the bridge over in Ohio, I can remember getting pulled over. My front tires were out of the parking lot. I was coming out of the parking lot. My front tires were in the street. Back tires were still in the parking lot. Dude hit the lights. He said I was driving without my headlights on. Hey, I got to take that one. My headlights were not on, but man, you could have actually let me drive before you pulled me over. So I took that, and but I can remember they had a court date behind it, and it's this very small town, so it was the mayor that was actually calling, letting me know the times that I had to be at court and everything. And I was a younger man at that time, and I thought I had a cool voicemail that was like some hip-hop music in the background. I was like, hey, it's your boy, Ron, like all that cool stuff. And I didn't just remember when I showed up to court, him being like enraged. He just looks at me, and he was like, why is it that you people act that way? Like, couldn't you just have some respect for yourself? And it was like he could barely contain himself to tell me these sort of things, like to just give me his 2 cents about how I was living my life by nerve to having an unprofessional voicemail and that sort of stuff. But those are the kind of things, when you experience them, you just kind of chalk it up to what it is. Because and I always say we, because black folks born in the Valley, I feel like sometimes it's a special breed. We are to the point where we're taking the idea that we walked out of the courtroom as the win. So he could have said anything to me, short of calling me the N-word. And if I can walk out, that's a win. And it's almost conditioned ourselves to believe that way when it comes to interactions with the police and the legal system in the area. But for it to begin to change even slightly, then I believe that the progress is being made for sure.
So a couple more questions for you guys. This has been a heck of an experience and definitely a learning experience for me. There are some individuals that feel left out or not supported, and how do we engage those individuals? We certainly want to. We're giving them. We want to enhance our programs here on campus, and as coaches here, step to the plate and give our ear and give our time. Certainly, President Favit is on board, and I even see our new athletic director Patrick Snively here in the audience, and his door is always open unless he's on a Zoom call, of course. Lots of Zoom calls, but in your time at the college over there, Corey, I mean, how do we engage those people?
As from an educational standpoint, I see once we look into the idea of diversity, including what we've been speaking about today about race and gender ideas, we start to see that organically, I think, even in Belmont, from a positive note. Some students are openly okay with the fact that they may be of a different race. They may be of a different orientation. And that's fine. That's great, because that means we don't have to be afraid. They're welcome to come out to that. But I think what we need to do is not be afraid to also promote the idea of that in general. And that's one of the things I kind of did with my presentation is it's okay, and it's okay to see that there are people who are like you here. And in honor for us to usher that in, we need to have either monthly, weekly, continuously representation from those people, either through student government associations or because of the very, they seem to cluster sometimes in the academic areas of mental health, and they feel more secure in those degrees that allow them to express themselves more freely than, let's say, going into an engineering degree. So you have to have some kind of, a liberal arts piece to that also. People feel more open to sometimes a liberal arts degree in college or university, or they can see the importance of early childhood education. It's a pathway. So I think creating the opportunities, breaking down those norms that you usually see in the High Valley that we all know that are here, and offering degree options that will better suit either through social work, mental health practices, weekly, monthly opportunities for those people to have a space where they can feel comfortable about those things and know that it doesn't always happen on social media. The importance of sometimes just staying in contact with people at a physical, tangible place like a college and have something present there makes it even more worthwhile. It's somewhere in a social media site saying, wow, that's where I feel more comfortable. No, you can feel comfortable here also outside those norms. That's where we have to bring it into the students.
Well, thank you, and Coach, on the football team, you've got a lot of personalities, just like my team. You've got some kids that are pretty outgoing and pretty astute, and able to speak their mind. I'm just going to throw some names out there like Tristan, Rich White, Chris Canaday, Jalen Dickerson, Alex Hill. I know those kids. Those kids they're articulate. They're giving. Great team players, leaders in their field. I know there's some players also that are not as engaging. Those players, whether it's women's basketball, men's basketball, football, that can fall through through those cracks. So how do we engage those kids?
I think a big thing is just being approachable. You know, us being coaches, they see us in a certain light on the field. You know, we have a certain, you know, persona that we have because we're trying to get things done and for the greater good of the team. But being approachable, just making sure they understand that they can come to us, building that relationship and trust. You'd be surprised what a 21-year-old will tell you if they trust you. So being able to allow them to come to you in that one-on-one setting, because a lot of the guys that you just named, for them to get up here and be in a forum like this to lead, they're uncomfortable with it, but they can do it by, on an individual basis, reaching out to their teammates, reaching out to their classmates, people that might be in their same major. So, but us as coaches, we have to do the same thing by making ourselves, you know, available within the campus, letting them see us, you know, when we're in the cafeteria, make sure they understand that they can approach us in that setting. You know, same thing with the professors, making sure the professors understand that, hey, when we're class checking, you can come to us with a concern. You can come to us with, you know, anything. If you just want to speak and say hello. I know for me, when I'm class checking, I have to make sure that I speak to the professors, speak while I'm in the hallway, because depending on what I'm doing and depending on the time, I might not be in the best of moods, you know, if a player's late. But being approachable for everybody on campus, I think that's going to help be able to, you know, reach out to the players and reach out to the rest of the faculty.
Hey, Coach, yeah, let me get a little bit of that one, only because there was very unique when you put engaging individuals. It just made me think of some stuff that when we did the that event that I talked about, the Art of Inclusion one that included the LGBT community. I remember it was originally called Beyond the Closet. And the idea was we were going to take photographs of these members of the community in the frameway, in their closet doorways. Like that was, and those were going to be the pictures that we used. And so when you said, how do you engage individuals that might feel left out, we had to meet them on their terms and talk to them a lot, because by talking to them, I ended up finding out. One of them looked at me and said, we are so much more than our closet stories. So I had to scrap the entire idea, because not being a member of that community, I had my own ideas in my head of how to represent them and what they would like to be seen and how they'd like to be shown. So I had to reevaluate it all and start going by their point of view, because they are who I wanted to include. And instead of, you know, letting my own mindset run everything, I just decided I'm going to go to the meetings with their groups, listen to them, and we ended up still having the event. We reworked it, but I would have made a grave mistake if I thought I knew the best way to engage a group of people that weren't anything like me. I got to kind of put it back on them, follow their lead, and make sure that I toe the line to bring them on board. And I just made me think of that when you guys started answering it.
Well, thanks. And we're going to end with this final question, Ron. And you know, there are people, people of color in this community that that need a helping hand, and may not always either know where to go or they know where to go, but there's that there's that pride factor of and that shame, and I know your staff and you do a very good job of opening your arms to those folks. And it's hard. We all have pride, and to be down and out, jobless, homeless, health issues. It's hard to admit that. How does your staff and you reach out to those folks, and maybe something that you say is gonna really help us here. Our kids here at Wheeling and other institutions, locally are very blessed to be able to be on campus. We're blessed to be playing. We're very, very, very blessed to be playing a sport. Even though we're playing in front of cardboard instead of people, we're happy to be playing. I think the the one thing that the one complaint I hear from the students is a snow day isn't a snow day anymore. A snow day is a virtual day. What happened to the snow days? Okay, so but I know the outdoor sports. I mean, they're everyone's happy to be here, and we have some positive momentum happening, but there's still people still need help. Students still need help, and people in the community still need help, and sometimes it's hard for them to reach out. How do you help those people? How does that happen?
That's a tough one, mainly because, like you said, that pride, when you insert that, is really is a tough thing. And sometimes you'll find yourself in positions where you want to get the help provided to them as quickly as you can, like you want to be just concise and get it done. And sometimes it might take a little while for folks to tell you that. And instead of being as patient as you should be with the person and letting them tell you what they need, we can sometimes interject what we think they might need and just start pushing them in a direction that they might not necessarily want to go in with the help that they need. Because some folks may genuinely need an ear or a shoulder. But some folks do need to go to a clothes closet or a food pantry. Like, their help is in depth, the stuff that they need. But other folks just need the idea that, hey, I'm struggling too, and we can get helped along. Because I had run into some gentlemen that wanted to sit down and talk, and I was in a time crunch. So the first thing I started doing was pulling out forms and, okay, well, let me know the shoe sizes of everybody in your family. If there's stuff that you guys need, like as far as bread and food. But that wasn't what they were there for. They were just exhausted, and they had ideas for things they wanted to do to help the community. But they know that we can't move on any of these ideas yet because everything's so shut down. So what that gentleman needed at the time was just an ear and someone to say, man, I'm with you, and once I can support you, I will. These ideas are good. And instead, he kind of got, here's a food box, that kind of stuff, and that's not necessarily what he was there for. So please just be as patient as you can with the person, and then just let the idea that you can help them and the offer of help sit for a minute and let them come to you with what help that they might necessarily need, so that you don't have any time wasted where that they really want to talk, or they need products, or they need food items, or they need referrals for something. Just let them tell you what it is and be the open book that just says, hey, I'm here whenever you're ready. Whatever it is you want to do, you let me know. I'll make it happen. But I guess the patience is the key.
Well, Ron, thank you very much for your time.
Hey, thank you, and I apologize again for the lateness. It was a little rough.
No.
But thank you for letting me be a part of it.
For anyone that needs help in the Valley, please get a hold of Ron Scott and his staff over at the YWCA. Belmont College, great place for individuals. Over and Corey is there to help. Coach Mott, thank you. I appreciate it. You've got practice in 58 minutes. And, you told me to keep talking so you didn't have to shovel snow. So I'm doing the best I can to string this along so you get out of shovel duty. And, again, I want to thank President Jenny Favid for allowing for us to have this platform. If your sports teams weren't able to watch this, I encourage them. Your coaching staff and to send them this link, because this is the start of the conversation. And as we grow, mature, and become more robust in our diversity, and learning about diversity and sharing our stories, we'll be able to have more events like this, with Jenny, with the Black Student Union, and with Student Life. So with that, I thank you very much, everyone, for your time. God bless you, and God bless Wheeling University and the Ohio Valley. Thank you.